our most important investors and clients are at home. And if we start to look at them like that through our entrepreneurial executive eyes, that's not impersonal. That'll keep us grounded. That'll save us from ourselves. That'll get us better at the things that we want to get better at.
In today's Ask an Expert segment, I'm going to be talking to a successful real estate entrepreneur, but we're actually going to be talking about his side hustle, where he's become recognized as the thought leader, helping entrepreneurs and business people where it matters the most, at home. Hi, I'm Joshua Carlsen, co-founder of Propelo Media. In today's segment, I'm talking to Jim Sheils. He is the founder of a group called 18 Summers, and what they do is they help families come together and build more meaningful relationships with practical steps and techniques that can be implemented immediately. I think you're going to get a lot out of this one, so let's jump right in.
All right, Jim, I'd like to welcome you to our Ask an Expert. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Joshua, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we've done a lot of these over the past several months, most of them with CEOs and founders and thought leaders, and we've gotten a lot of incredible insights that have helped businesses, but this one's going to be a little bit different today because we're actually going to be focused on the business person and the foundation for them, which is their family, and that's really where you come in. So I'd like to give you the stage to talk about what it is that you are doing to help in that capacity.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I started a company called 18 Summers. We basically had a mission where we felt that CEOs, entrepreneurs, executives, there's no reason they should be successful in business, but unsuccessful at home. And we were seeing that a lot. And I'm a product of my own environment, my own needs. So I wanted to find ways, strategies and rhythms and systems that we could actually plug in at home so we could be successful in business and at home. So we started doing retreats and workshops and talks for EO. And it took a pretty big following because there's so much out there to teach us how to be a better business leader, but not necessarily how to be a better leader and member of the family. And that's what we focus on.
Okay, and we're going to jump into that, but I think what's interesting about you is that when you look at Jim Sheils, you do see 18 Summers, you see your book, the family board meeting, but it appears that this is actually a side hustle to a very successful real estate business. So I just like to, and you briefly touched on it, 10 years ago you started this, but you were already off and running with a real estate career, and now you started building this on the side, and it sounds like both of them are going simultaneous. Talk me through how that came about.
Yeah, so we have two businesses. Thank you. 22 years ago, I started my real estate investment company. It's still going strong today.
Right.
And 10 years ago, it was a pinnacle time in my life, Joshua. And what was happening was I was bringing my company back into full swing after near bankruptcy from the '08 meltdown.
Yep.
I was in the process of adopting my two oldest sons. I have 4 children, 2 adopted, 2 biological now, but younger.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great. So I was adopting 2 sons, and I had just been approved to go through the process of donating a kidney to my father.
Wow.
And so incredible. Here I am running a pretty large, and it had had its wounds through the '08 meltdown, but we saw our investors through. We rebuilt. But it was back on that, getting back into the groove zone still. And then all of a sudden I'm adopting 2 sons. I'm donating a kidney to my father. And it just changed the way I looked at family life. I think certain things hit at a point of critical, and you can never look at things the same. And the priority and the value of family life just became different for me.
Right.
And I started to share that and share some of the things that came out of these huge experiences. And it started to resonate with a lot of entrepreneurs that felt the exact same way as I did.
So how does it come about though? I mean, obviously I totally get you have these life-changing moments, and it sounds like you kind of had 3 of them happen fairly simultaneously. How do you start molding? Like, you see it and you see the need, but how do you go about molding into what is a very successful family-focused business that's helping, family and children across the country?
Well, I think 2 things. First of all, it was very organic.
Okay.
It was very organic, where a few families said, "Hey, will you teach us how to surf?" And I said, "Sure, come out, whatever beach we're at," and I teach them how to surf. And then I was at that weird age when I went into entrepreneurship. I was halfway between the age of most entrepreneurs and CEOs and their children. So I was like that fun uncle, mediator.
Yep.
And so then all of a sudden we started to say, well, why don't you schedule a retreat and ask some of your mastermind groups and EO friends to come? And they started to come, and we started to have these conversations, and those turned into sharing some things that were going on in our own home life. And so it was very organic. So it was never forced. That was an important thing about this. This was very organic. In fact, I needed it for myself. So this was a self-need. And it grew very organically, and I was my own test subject. So I think one of the reasons for the success, sometimes when we try to force ourselves into a business and design content, let's say, well, we think it might work. I really tested everything on myself, and I tried to only deliver the top shelf things, the top shelf principles that had worked for me and had kind of been formulated by tons of families that we got together with in these settings. And you went pretty deep with to talk, very rawly, like what's going right, what's going wrong. Why don't you feel that you can trust your son or daughter? Why don't you feel like you can trust your father or your mother? So it just rose things to the top. And I was using them for myself and fine-tuning them before I rolled them out.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm curious what business has been like for you since COVID, since kind of that mid-March period. What has business been like for you? Because I feel like obviously there was certainly a demand for it before, but there's been a lot of, inward thinking, I think, for a lot of people. So how has that impacted you guys?
In 2008 almost destroyed me financially because of real estate. I've been shocked at how well real estate is doing. Shocked. Because the stay-at-home orders for what I do for my new construction model now is just, it's actually been elevated. So that was a nice surprise. I said, maybe that's some karma coming back. With the family education side, we had 3 to 4 retreats that were canceled. We had, tons of speaking engagements with EO that we had to postpone. So those things happened. But what I liked was this has always been more of a means to an end. And I've been able to the demand, Joshua, and how we became, in touch, just say, okay, everything's been brought home. Well, business has been brought home, school's been brought home, everything's happening at home. And we're starting to uncover we were more wounded than we thought. Right. What do we do? So I tried to I go back to really sound principles that are easy to understand, easy to buy into, easy to apply consistently to see results. And so we've been inundated with calls, with webinars, with interviews like this. Yeah. And what I'm trying to do is say, let's not get complicated. Let's get back to the core principles that can help you through this, because you don't want to come through this where family life has been weakened or splintered or broken apart. I believe if certain things are put in place, it can be even stronger. So our demand, some of our bigger events, of course, had to be postponed, which I was fine. But the demand to get our principles out has actually risen to the top, because I'm sorry, with a lot of business people, you go, yeah, family, I'm all good there, and a lot of times we say that. And what I've learned with a lot of successful people in business, they say that because either they truly believe that, but they just can't see the whole picture. Right. Or they're afraid to face that, because it's easier to be successful in business than it is to be a good husband and father. That's my personal take anyway.
Yeah, I think that's true. So I'd like to talk about the fact that, we are in this life-altering moment for several of us. Prior to that, probably, and even it probably still resonates today, is that, and you mentioned it, like, hey, family is good. Or maybe I know that family is not as good as it can be, but I don't know how to break the paradigm because my mind is so entrepreneurial focused. I have this business that I'm running. How do you break that is question one. How do you just kind of break that paradigm? And the second question is, what do you have to say for parents that are like, introduced to this concept, but I've got a teenager and, the ship sailed. And so it's, I can't do anything about it now, kind of thing. So two-parted question there.
Yeah. Well, with the teenager, I disagree. Okay. I disagree wholeheartedly, which is a good thing. People want to hear that. I disagree. Is it going to be slow? Is it going to be a small comebacks? Is there going to be incremental growth? Yes. It's not going to necessarily be an instant home run, model relationship. No, right. Because there's been time of this splintering and this distance. but there are things that can be put into motion. The same way with bringing a business out of recovery of a bad fall,
Sure.
you can do the same with the relationships. And what I found is the solution doesn't have to be as complicated as we've made the problem in our head.
Okay.
If we're willing to take some incremental steps to set some rhythms in place, you can start to see what I consider drastic results in probably a few short months.
Sure.
But again, we have to be willing to be aware of our blind spots, and we have to be willing to not overcomplicate the solution. We're trying to bring in these grandiose solutions where if we just got back to some core fundamentals, which we'll talk about today, I'm sure, it's not going to get you all the way there, but I think it can get you 80% of the way there.
Okay. And so what about the paradigm shift though? Do the parents that are like, yeah, I know I need it, but I'm busy. Like, how do you break them? How do you break through to that person to get them to realize like, hey, this is just as important, actually more important than what you're doing over at the business?
I think the best way was the name of our company, 18 Summers.
Okay.
That was brought to me years ago by a mentor of mine. He said, Jim, what you're doing is really important. And let me tell you, I got 18 summers. Right. My daughters are still my daughters. He's in his 70s, still fit as a fiddle, great relationship with his 3 daughters. But he said, it's different. I'm telling you, it's different.
Right.
Grab those first 18 summers. And for me, I adopted my 2 oldest sons at 7 and 5.
Okay.
So that math equation went off in my head and I went, holy cow.
Yeah.
I only have
shrinking
11.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's statistics that show, I think, I'm not sure if it was Daniel Pink or is another author, that the average person spends 85% of the quality time they'll ever have with their children by the end of the 18th summer.
Okay.
So what that tells you is, again, a friend of mine, an EO guy, David Bach, best-selling author, he says, Jim, the years are not all created equal. This is when we were talking about family. Right. So they're not all created equal. We think we'll have all this opportunity of time. And there was actually really bad advice that was given. Hey, I'm going to put my head down for the next 5 to 7 years and build the business, then I'll come back to family. That's really bad advice.
Sure.
Because you cannot make up that lost time.
Yeah, right. Once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah. So I tell people, let's start with easy math. How many summers do you have left?
Right.
And say, that's fine. Just know that the average person uses 85% of the quality time they'll ever have by the end of the 18th summer. Okay. And when they start to think in those terms, I know that's woken me up. A lot of people that have seen me speak said, wow, that one simple math equation.
Yep.
So that's the starting point. And another thing for a lot of us successful business people, please realize this one simple fact that I've heard time and time again in the exact words and sometimes a little deviation. But a lot of the kids have come out and said when they're comfortable, decompressed, and feeling safe and a little vulnerable, they say, look, it wasn't the big business we ever wanted. We wanted you.
Right.
And that should really, really give you courage, because I think there's 3 big things for me as a father.
Okay.
I got to provide, I got to protect, but I also got to love.
Yeah.
I got to love them, and love is a verb. And if you're only providing and protecting, those are honorable. Those are sacred. Those are important.
Yep.
But there's more to it. Sometimes you got to, provide and protect, but you got to make sure you're loving them too. And that's a very active word. That's a verb.
Yeah. It's the stool with 3 legs, right?
There it
if
is.
You're not providing that one, it's great that you're doing the others, but it's going to start tipping. So you talked about one thing about rhythm, and I'd like to expand upon this because, I've looked at the different rhythms, and I'll let you talk about those, but I do feel like a lot of people are like, they seem a little kitschy, maybe kitschy is the wrong word, but they just seem a little too fluffy. But the reality, from my personal experiences, rhythm's a very important thing for anything that you want to get better at. And so whether it's losing weight, eating healthier, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle change, right? It's not I'm going to, go exercise really hard. I'm just going to become more active in my life. So talk about the rhythm of family and what are the recommendations you have to help from that standpoint?
Yeah, well, wealth and relationships go hand in hand with principles. I mean, I've done a daily huddle with my real estate investment team for years now, and that's a rhythm that beats the drum, that keeps us in touch, that keeps us moving in the same direction. I found the same things with family. And again, we're not talking like, oh man, yeah, they can seem a little catchy, but it's just like, oh yeah, you want me to be in shape, so I'm going to wake up every morning 5 days a week and exercise for 45 minutes. Yes. It's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, right.
The results versus the non-results are huge.
Yeah.
The same thing with your family. Let me give you an interesting quote so we get really back to basics.
Sure.
Not quote, a statistic. About 60 years ago, The average dinner time with a family was about 90 minutes. 90 minutes, which seems really long. I'm like, wow, that's long. Do you want to know what the average dinner time as a family is today?
Much drastic from that, if at all.
12,
For
12 minutes.
right.
12 minutes. So we're rushing out to things. So if we're losing certain rhythms, that's a big one. Also, I work with a lot of spouses. We've done spousal dinner dates for EO and lots of groups. And I ask a simple question where I say, how many of you can name, daily huddle, or when do you meet with your CFO? I meet with my CFO every Thursday, 3 to 5. Awesome. Can you name the day and the time every week that you go on a date with your husband or your wife?
Right.
Crickets. I mean, and these are top performers, less than 10%. And I say that which we schedule gets done.
Yeah.
Our most important investors and clients are at home. And if we start to look at them like that through our entrepreneurial executive eyes, that's not impersonal. That'll keep us grounded. That'll save us from ourselves. That'll get us better at the things that we want to get better at. And again, it doesn't have to be 40 or 50 rhythms. We can talk today about 2 or 3 that, again, I've seen people have astronomical results when they put them into, constant use, deliberate use, and consistent use. And the results are staggering. And again, when I say, oh, we're having trouble with my wife, and I say that simple question, when's the last time you went on a date with her? Oh, shit. I don't know, 9 months ago. And I'm going, okay. We got to set aside time for the people we love the most, or of course things are going to start to splinter.
So I obviously don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think that's one of the most meaningful things that's going to come out of today's conversation. And I can't stress it enough because it seems so elementary, but it is foundationally so important because it will change the trajectory of, of where you're heading or maybe just where you are, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a downward trend, but clearly there can be a gap in any relationship. And so these rhythms are just so fundamentally important. You talked about a connection sheet. I watched an interview where you talked about a connection sheet. I'd like to talk about this because it seems like a great way to build trust between, a parent and a child. And presumably, I'm not sure the exact use case, but presumably this could be between a spouse and another spouse as well. Yeah. But talk about the connection sheet, what it's about, and how that helps that relationship.
Yeah, the connection formula, one of my favorite things. It was actually created by me and my father. Okay. Years ago on the beach, we were getting ready for the kidney donation. And I said to him, when you got to sign a sheet of paper with the Mayo Clinic that says, look, we're good, but we're not, actually, you might die. And you got to hold us harmless. And I went to my dad, we grew up in the Northeast, talking about who you are, what you're about. That's just not normal. Irish Catholic, your arm could be falling off. Everything's fine. Yep, help it out. And when you're faced with mortality, certain things shed away. And I really just said to my dad, I said, Pop, I don't think you know who I am. I don't really know who you are. And I don't want to go out as strangers if we're going out. Okay. And so we sat on a beach and we really formulated and then came up with 3 simple questions that became a part of our retreats, became a part of different workshops that I do. And it's really simple, but every parent or spouse says, I want to support their gifts and talents more. I want to feel closer to them. I want to be able to, remove the obstacles. Yep. So we limited it down to 3 simple questions, and I'll share them with you now. And it had a profound effect on the relationship I have with my father. It's never been the same since that day on the beach. Yep. With my wife, with my 2 adopted sons, and now I haven't done it yet with my 5 and 3-year-old, but my 5-year-old is getting ready to do it for the first time, and several other families. So question number 1, people I know right now are going, what are the questions? Just give them a minute. But they're very simple. The first question is, what do you truly care about? What excites you? Yeah. And that seems really, really simple, but it's very profound. So many parents say to me, I want to understand my kids' gifts and talents and support them more. If you never ask, how will you know?
Right.
So with that day on the beach, like for example, with my father, he's been playing Irish music since he was a kid.
Okay.
And he looks like a leprechaun. He's just this little Irish guy. And I knew that. I saw him go to the pubs. He's not a big drinker, but always played Irish music. And that day he said, I said, well, why do you like Irish music so much? And he said, well, he said, you know, his dad died when he was 6 years old. He said,
Okay.
Grandpa died when I was 6. Then my brother and only sister died of lung cancer before you were born, you know, and then, you know, I went through the 80s and lost my business. Da, da, da. And so he said, but through all this, I kept playing my Irish music. I didn't know this. So let me tell you, after learning this about my dad, if there was Irish music within 60 miles of St. Augustine, we were going. You know, he's still 86 years old, playing, doing great since the kidney donation. But I learned something about him. He learned about me that day, how much writing meant to me, hosting these retreats. You know, he was like, wait, what are you doing with families? He didn't understand it. But when I started to explain, you know, usually after I get back from a talk, it's my dad. How was it? Did you talk about this? Yeah. So we're supporting each other. Like, we learned more about each other, things that were right in front of us, but we didn't understand.
Sure.
We do a whole list of it. There it is, right there on a cheat sheet. What do I truly care about? What makes me tick? It's right there for him to see and right there for me to see. Same thing with my sons. The next question is, what do you truly appreciate about me, about the other person?
Yep.
And this is a really vulnerable time, super vulnerable time. But I was always
tears coming up with this one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm pretty good now because I've talked about it, but believe me, I cried plenty about it.
Yeah.
But with my dad, I was always in trouble. Always in trouble. I was not a good student, ADD, you know, born to be an entrepreneur, I guess you say, but not good in school. My dad said, you know, you were always so funny and, you know, the class clown, and I'd be trying to discipline you, but I'd be laughing out of the side of my head because I'd be like, this is, and it was good to hear that, you know, confirmation.
Yep.
And for me, this is a great example. For me, I told you, my grandfather died when my dad was 6 years old.
Yeah.
And I was about 36. This is, again, 10 years ago now. I'm 46 now. On the beach that day, I said, you know, Dad, never once, I've never told you this, but never once with losing your brother and sister, with going through tough business times, I never heard you once pull out the trump card and say, well, what do you expect? I never had a father.
Right.
Never. And it was his right. It really was his right to pull that card or start to become a heavy drinker or something. Sure. Say, well, I didn't have a father. He never pulled that trump card. I said, I don't know if you realize how much I respect you for that. You know, thanks for setting that example. And obviously this is a big time in my life. I'm adopting. I said, that sets me to a higher standard.
Yeah.
So when you explain these kind of things, it was right there, but I didn't take the time in 36 years to tell my dad I appreciate that he never complained about growing up without a father.
Which is so meaningful for him to hear. Yeah.
Huge. And it's like, wow, what kind of validation? Because the one thing you'll find about entrepreneurs, Joshua, we don't want to admit that we love the feeling when we know our family has our back, but we really strive for that. We really need that. When you have it, you're like 3 or 4 feet taller in all ways. So again, I'm just giving an example. So, but listed down there, and to have it in front of you. So at retreats, when a young 8 or 9-year-old there is their father, who's usually pretty busy, listing down this huge list of all the things they truly admire or appreciate about them. It's a game changer. Right. It's an absolute game changer. And the way my dad and I came up with that question, I'm going to divert to this story before we get to question 3, because it's just too good. I had newspaper delivery when I was a little kid. So I'm aging myself. Any kids watching this, they're entrepreneurs, are going, wait, what? What's a
what is that?
Yeah, right. Yeah, with paper? So I had a newspaper route, and I remember I'd get up and I'd check the comics every morning, you know, ADD class clown. And right next to it was the editorials, right? And it was either an Ann Landers or a Dear Abby, whichever. And some reason I glanced at it, I read it, I cut it out, and I kept it for over 20 years. Uh-huh. And it was about, and this is really important for parents out there, showing the justice and the potency of a true compliment. It was a math teacher. It was about a math teacher in the Midwest. Friday afternoon, the kids were studying some new math equation. They weren't getting it. They were all getting frustrated. They were tired. This was the cool teacher. She said, you know what, put your books away. She said, take out a sheet of paper, and I want you to write down the name of everyone in your class. And so they all wrote down the names. And she said, now, this is a secret list. No one's going to see it. I want you to write down one thing you really admire about that person. but you probably never told them. In fact, you definitely haven't told them.
Yeah.
I want you to write that down. So they're all, kind of covering their paper and they do it. So they go down and do it, hand in the sheet. She goes home over the weekend and she makes a master list for each kid, right? So Bobby's list, she transfers it all to Bobby's and then Mary's. And so anyway, goes back in Monday morning, hands each kid the list. And the story is they were just in awe,
Sure.
a little shocked, a little awe, and a couple of, wow, really? Wow, reallys?
Yeah.
And they took the list. They go home. They never heard about it again. Years later, one of the kids from this class was killed in Vietnam. And it was a small Midwest town, supposedly. So a lot of people went to the funeral, very community feel. And they were all invited to the parents' house after the funeral for a reception. And the father went up to the teacher and said, I think you need to see something. My son was carrying this when he died in Vietnam. And it was the list, several years later. And they, the other kids were there, supposedly, other kids from the class.
Yeah, right.
And they stepped forward one by one. And one kid's like, I have it in my diary. The other's like, I have it in my wedding album. The other's like, I have mine right here in my wallet too, So
Yeah.
it was that lesson. I'm trying to remember how they ended. It was something like kind words are worth much.
Sure.
Very little. And with being busy entrepreneurs, we have our guard up all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't take the time to do this. So the potency of actually taking the time to write a list and say to your young child, a 12-year-old going into adolescence, these are all the things I admire and appreciate about you.
Mm-hmm.
The odds of that, of ever happening to that degree, are almost slim to none for all the people, including myself. I mean, come on. I didn't have a great relationship with my dad, but it wasn't terrible.
Yep.
He didn't know any of these things, basically, hardly any of them. So again, we're getting back to basic cores for connection. That's why it's called the connection formula. I want you to know all the things that make me tick and I truly care about, that really get me out of bed in the morning, that I appreciate. Here are all the things I admire about you.
Right.
And I want you to know. And number 3, one thing to work on. Question mark. One thing to work on. Now, notice, Joshua, I didn't say 50 things to work on, right?
No, because it's...
Yeah, if you have the 50 next things that you got to improve, everyone shuts down, right?
Right, yeah.
Everyone is willing to stay open to that one thing. Just the one thing, right?
Yep.
And if you're willing to do that, it's usually not the many, it's the one. That's what we say. So, for me and my father, we have a different spiritual paths. I mean, I just... For his following of religion, I'm still very spiritually based, but different.
Yep.
And he brought that. He said, one thing I want you to work on. And I said, okay. Well, and I explained to him, I might not live the rituals you do, but I live the principles. That's why we're here. We had a talk that day, and he hasn't been worried about my faith since. And I think my thing said, Dad, we're going into an exciting time where you're so fit for your age. They want you to do this because you have longevity in your family. And I feel like all you do all day, 6 hours a day, is watch negative news. That really worries me. How's that going to prepare you for the donation? How's that going to prepare you for the afterwards? Do you really want to get healthy again and just do that? So he wanted me to work on my faith, and I wanted him to work on exposure to negative things. Yeah. And that's just one example. My sons, they said to me, this was huge. My oldest said, I get really sad when you travel and you haven't told me. And I'm like, oh, and he says, I wake up and then you're gone. We're saying, I thought we told you. He's like, no, well, if you did, I didn't hear it. And he said, I get really sad when you travel.
Right.
And so we made sure from there, gosh, we did it. Then the next time when we did it a few years later, he said, I'd really like to be more involved. Well, so he started traveling with me on certain things. And I started cutting things back. So there's always something that if we open ourselves to say the one thing to work on, it can help our marriage, it can help the relationship with our kids or parents. So that's it. That's the connection formula. And that one sheet of paper, Joshua, for retreats, workshops we've done, has become a healthy relationship cheat sheet for so many people.
Sure.
It's all right there. Here's what makes me tick and I really care about. Here's all the things I really admire and appreciate about you. Here's the one thing in our relationship I'd love to see you work on, and there's heavy things that could come out of that. You drink a lot. You raise your voice too much.
Right.
You're never present here. You're on your phone, even at the dinner table. Like, there's been some big things,
Yeah.
but the funny thing is, when we work on that one thing, I think it was a mentor of mine out of Texas. He used to say to me when I'd be working on business problems, a lot of things shooting out, he'd say, all right, hold on. If a bunch of wolves break into your sheep yard, all you do is you shoot the big one and the little ones will run under the fence. So, and that's the same thing here.
Sure.
You're working on that one big thing to work on. So that's it. That's the connection formula. Those three questions, if you'll take the time, space, and do it one-on-one. One-on-one is the most potent connector of family that I know. I have one-on-one time with my wife and with each one of my children pretty rhythmically.
Yeah.
And big family times are great. Again, I have like 7,000 first cousins, being Irish Catholic, but one-on-one time's great. So that's what you really want to stick with. You do this connection formula with these three questions one-on-one, Joshua, it's a game changer.
Right. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is actually something I observed, kind of preparing for this interview, was that one-on-one aspect. And I do think that that's a meaningful part, because again, this just gets back to, like, we're busy, right? We have all of these things happening, but the reality is, if it's important, and there's nothing more important than family, you will make the time for it. And it's important to give each person, because every spouse is different, right? There may be overlapping similarities, but or they could be, night and day. But you want to take time to nurture, each one of those individually. So beautiful formula. I love it. And the thing I like about the last one, the one, once you tackle that one, it's done, right? Or maybe it's something it's continually worked on, but then you can talk about, well, what's the next thing? What's the next thing that we can evolve, and just continue to grow together. So there's a saying, and I wanted to get your take on this. I have a feeling I know what it is, but don't take your work home to family. What are your thoughts on this, and how business people should or shouldn't involve their family with work?
Yeah. So with the pandemic,
Yeah.
one of the things that I got really, really adamant about when people said, I'm struggling, I'm this, and it's because my own mistakes, right? First day of the pandemic, second day of lockdown, I was helping a guy who was going through some really tough business stuff, huge retail, and I think he's getting taken advantage by something. And I'm texting him, and I get off, and I'm in my kitchen, right? Taking a work text, middle of the day, and I'm, swearing under my breath, and, I'm really passionate about it because I want to help him. And there was a lot of unknowns. My 5-year-old daughter standing right in front of me, and she goes, Daddy, why are you so mad at me? I don't even see her standing there, Joshua.
Yeah.
So we are not that good to do half-in parenting, to take a quick text or a phone call. It's infectious. Sure. And you cannot. So what I've said is, you have to have times and spaces of complete and total unavailability for work. Okay. It's absolutely key. And we don't know if more lockdowns are going to happen. So I call it work puking in your living room. Everyone's hanging out. Kids are being kids. You all of a sudden take a call right in the living room, and your 5-year-old's singing a 5-year-old song. How dare he or she do that when you have to take this important call? You're coming through the pandemic. Yeah. And that's the problem. We're not keeping clear lines, and it's really important to have clear lines. I call it, I don't know if you looked up, we started saying, yeah, social distancing was important, I guess. What about tech distancing?
Yeah, right.
Because if you're always there with your kids, always feeling that zzz, 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 that's not a good thing. Yeah. So getting back to dinner, you might have to have a time and a space to be working overtime. Look, there's some tough things happening, but have a space in your home where you're away, you're outside. Let me tell you, my daily huddle, like I told you, Jonathan, I learned really quick with everyone home, in the mornings, my 9 a.m. huddle, I had to go out to my car. It just that crazy here with, 4 kids, 3 dogs. It was just, so I went out to my car, but I had space and I wasn't work puking on my family. That's not fair, because the one thing I told a lot of entrepreneurs, and hopefully this sets home, guess what? The pandemic's not our family's fault. No. And we stop and go, oh, of course not. Okay, but think about that. Have you acted short towards them, a little more, distance towards them, a little more impatient, a little, more aggressive? And it's, again, nothing they've necessarily done. It's the pressures of the other. So we have to remember this isn't their fault. So you have to keep separate time and space and practice tech distancing. That dinner time challenge I was telling you about, I've said to people, how do we get back to a couple of, strong core exercises? Well, what about dinner? Set dinner at the same time every night, 5:30 to 6:30, 6 to 7, and for 1 hour, everyone's phone's off, everyone's laptop's off, the news is off. I mean, that's another thing with, do you have to stay informed in today's world? Sure, but you can do that in about a half hour a day, I think. You start pushing to an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of news a day, you're not informed, you're infected. You don't want to be infected when you're trying to relate with people.
Right.
So we had the dinner time challenge, 1 hour a day. Everyone's phone's off. You can't get me. You can't get my wife. You can't get my sons. Everyone's disconnected. We're there in front of each other. It might feel awkward at first. Like, well, what do? We can't just get on a quick meme and this and that.
Right.
But start to slow down dinner. You have conversation. And we do something called best and weirdest every day at dinner. So an hour, everyone's phone's off. And what was the best part of the day? What was the weirdest part of the day? My business consultant buddy taught me that. And what you learn is incredible. The conversation, you're replanning adventures, you're laughing, and it slows things down. But again, that's one little step. And again, we go back to, no, but I want to get to the grandiose strategy and plan. Let's go back to core.
Yeah.
Are you shutting down? Are you taking calls right in front of your family at a whim? Are you getting short with them because you're trying to finish a work text when you shouldn't be taking it right there when your 3-year-old's crawling on your leg? And what are you doing at dinner time? Let's get back to the most basic family meal. Are you sitting down for 7.5 minutes, taking a text? A kid has an iPad at the table. That's not a good idea. So I'd say get back to the core.
Starts with one step, and that's a great step to start with. And it's a meaningful one. So, there is a struggle going out there with a lot of businesses. So what are the thoughts as far as, you don't want to be, obviously you want this tech distancing and you don't want the 5-year-old, and maybe 5 is not the age, but at some point, how do you overlap and how do you share some of these struggles that, I'm having in my day-to-day career life? Because this is, almost, and I guess it depends on your perspective, but to me, it's unprecedented what we're facing right now, right? Pandemic, economic, social unrest, like it's just this perfect storm of volatility. What are the recommendations to just give a little bit of exposure that, hey, business is down, right? Your retail friend, that's a tough one right now. How do we expose them just enough so that they have some understanding, but not, overwhelm them with all of the burdens that come with that?
I like to speak to my kids, frankly. So again, my daughter said, "Why are you so mad at me?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "I'm sorry, sweetie. Daddy just got a little angry and scared for his friend because there's some different things happening for work for him." And so I just explained it. And I think it's okay to say to your kids, "I'm feeling a little bit worried and scared, but you know what? I felt like that before, and I'm going to be okay." With my older sons, I was able to tell them, "Look, I've been through the fire of business."
Yeah.
And I looked at this saying, "Is this another 2008?"
Yep.
And what I think one of the best things we can do is be honest about our feelings, but then give a reassurance at the end, like, "But hey, I've been through this before." Yep. And so I feel this way, but I'm taking steps that we're going to be able to handle this. I also, again, going back to simple things that work, best and weirdest. My 3-year-old said, "We went to Granny and Poppy's today for weirdest. Went to Granny and Poppy's." My parents, they're in their 80s, so we're dropping off groceries at a distance right at the beginning of the pandemic. He said, "I couldn't hug Granny and Poppy today." And that opened up a big conversation for everyone on what is this thing? What is this? They call it the virus, for a 3 and 5-year-old. It opened up big things. And even for me, when I have to go weirdest, gosh, it was really weird to hear that my friend that has done this, or it was really weird for me to have to go through all of these economic reports today to see where does things stand with us, So I would share that and it would become conversation. So that was a big way to do it. I think it's okay, and I think it's human for our kids to know we're struggling and to admit that. I think you set the leadership tone. Now, let me be clear on that. We set the leadership tone. Now, to be like, oh my gosh, we're screwed, we're losing the house.
The sky is falling.
But to be able to say, gosh, there's some really weird things happening on in business. And it's pretty stressful. It's hard on me, and I'm working through it, but sometimes it's a lot to deal with. So I appreciate your support and patience with me. That goes a long way.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're so scared to say it. Nope, everything's fine. Nope, we're good.
Right.
You're not setting a very good leadership tone, because you know what that does, Joshua, is all the things where parents are like, what scares parents the most? Distance from their children, addiction, suicide, all the things that people are facing now. If we set that tone that we're Superman, we're invulnerable, then our kids cannot relate to us, because none of us were like that when we were teens.
No.
So if you try to set that, they're like, how will they relate? And if they try to bring up, gosh, I'm really struggling with being home, being separated from my friends, not being able to keep up with school, and everything's fine, they think they have to live up to that. They feel isolated, they feel alone, and that's when some really ugly stuff starts.
Yeah, that just builds more separation.
Yep, and it was in good conscience. So we do set a leadership tone, but in being a leader, it's okay, as Brene Brown talks about, it's okay to have vulnerability and say, I'm struggling with this. I'm going to get through it, but yeah, I'm feeling a little heavy. I'm feeling a little lost. I'm feeling confused, feeling a little sad. That's okay.
Yep.
That's okay to own that.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's, to your point, they just overlap, right? It's the same principle, but they overlap. Okay, is there anything else that you'd like to share that you think is important that we haven't covered, whether it's just in general or whether it's just kind of related to this? And I'll take my weird of the day will be what is weird about this, just everything that you think is important that you want to share on.
Yeah, there's something that we've been doing in a lot of interviews and a lot of consulting we're doing. And that first day of the pandemic, when I made a stance that day, a proud stance where I said, I don't think I handled 2008 as gracefully as I could have.
Yeah.
And I still got through it. And I'm like, no matter what happens, I'm going to handle this with grace and leadership for my family. And that, one of the big ways I did that is I've always asked myself this question, but I literally sat down and read about it and meditated on it. And it's reframing the whole situation. And the best way I know for an individual to reframe a situation is ask the question, what would my 75-year-old self say to me right now? What's the advice they would give me? Okay. You have fun with that, like you said. And I always joke, like, I hope I still have some hair. I hope I'm surfing still,
right.
I'm still involved in fun things like this. But what would he really say to me?
Yeah.
When you pause and reflect and start to make notes, I mean, it was clear as a bell. And I've interviewed some big thought leaders and say, we're going through this pandemic. What would your 75-year-old self give you advice on right now? They say. And it's not really important what a thought leader will say. What will you say to yourself? And for me, Joshua, it's like, you've been through this before.
Yep.
You'll probably be through this again. Business things come up and down. You do your best. You get focused, get educated on what's happening, take the best actions, and do your best. And right now, at family, there's toddler meltdowns, there's teen grumpiness. But man, that's the good stuff. That's the good stuff, man. I'm telling you, as the 75-year-old self, looking at you now at 45, I've turned 46 in the last month. But everyone's home. Everyone's healthy. You're right across from the beach. You have food. This is a magic time. This is a good stuff. You're going to miss that teen grumpiness and those toddler meltdowns. They're not going to last forever. Right. Eat it up, man. Just eat it up and laugh. Laugh. It's okay to laugh, even enjoy, even when there's unknowns and struggles and that. And I took that to heart, Joshua, to the point where I think the best conviction I can tell you is, about 2 months in, our 14-year-old said, Dad's been so happy through this whole thing. It's annoying. I was like, woohoo, that was my big victory.
Mission accomplished, right?
Yeah, right. So and again, it wasn't perfect.
Oh yeah,
It
of course.
was better than most things, but again, give yourself that gift. Sit down for a minute and say, okay, what will my 75-year-old self say? Because it widens the situation. It gives you a bigger, vision of the overall. And I think a lot of people say, I'm not going to let this eat me. I'm
Right.
not going to let this do me. There's opportunity right now. It's okay to laugh. Wow. Like I'm getting forced to have more, because some people business might be fine or great,
Yeah.
but they're saying, I have more time with my family and I've really been neglecting that. I'm going to step up and make the most of that.
Right.
Other people might be reinventing themselves, but when you look at it from that longer way, there's some sage wisdom that I think can come back to you that can, give you better footing, grounding moving forward.
Sure. Well, a big word that I'm fond and I probably overuse it is perspective. So it's not uncommon for me to ask a guest like, hey, if you were to go back and ask, younger you that's just starting out, what advice would you give? But I love this twist because the reality is you can't go back in time. And that's a great piece to share insights with others. But if you want to do something meaningful for you, I think that's a fantastic approach. Go forward, go to your later years and think, what would I be proud of? What would I want to change about, where I'm at right now or what's happening? So it's just tremendous advice. So thank you so much for sharing that.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. Always love being in interviews like this. I know you guys are working with a lot of great people. So hopefully this helped round out a little bit of the family life, because
Definitely.
when it's all said and done, it's such an important component. And again, I want to encourage people, sometimes we're only a few principles, a few rhythms away from being where we want to be. So
Right.
don't overcomplicate, don't let the solution be more complicated than it needs to be.
Sure.
The stuff we talked about today is a great starting point. I absolutely promise you.
Couldn't agree more. So thank you so much for coming on. I very much look forward to having you back on again in the future.
Yeah, happy to do it.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Joshua.